Support for WUWM podcasts comes from Bliffert Lumber, family-owned and operated for over 120 years. Bliffert serves contractors and homeowners across Milwaukee and southeastern Wisconsin. Learn more at bliffertlumber.com.
From 89.7 WUWM Milwaukee's NPR, this is Lake Effect. I'm Sam Woods. On today's show, we bring you the full version of How to Evict Your Landlord. It's the story of David Tomlin, a large out-of-state corporate landlord, and the Milwaukee tenants who united against him.
Tenants are uniting, no more blaming us, intimidating us, overcharging us, ignoring us, hurting us. We're taking back our power.
We learn how and why tenants organized and how they found a powerful ally, the city of Milwaukee. And we'll learn all about the lawsuits that threaten to evict Tomlin from over 200 of his Milwaukee properties.
That is the one thing that a property owner needs to make their properties worth it. They need a revenue stream. A receivership cuts that revenue stream to zero.
That's coming up on Lake Effect. This is Lake Effect from 89.7 WUWM Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Sam Woods, and thank you for joining us today. Today, it's a special edition of Lake Effect. We're bringing you our full 3-part series, How to Evict Your Landlord, produced by WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez and myself. You may have heard that one of Milwaukee's largest landlords is in big legal trouble.
The city of Milwaukee is suing an out-of-state corporate landlord, Highgrove Holdings Management. It owns hundreds of properties. This lawsuit could set new precedent for how Milwaukee handles what it calls negligent landlords.
David Tomlin, founder of Highgrove Holdings Management, LLC, owns over 200 rental properties in Milwaukee. But lawsuits from the city and major lenders could ultimately take those properties away. These lawsuits are not the beginning of the story. They follow a year-long campaign by Common Ground, a nonpartisan advocacy organization that united Tomlin's tenants against him. WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez and I spent a few months with Common Ground and some of Tomlin's tenants to learn about him, what he represents, and how tenants took back their power. This is part 1 of How to Evict Your Landlord. Our story starts here, in a home on the north side of Milwaukee, 23rd and Keefe, with Deshawn Harris.
Stand to yourself is the best way anyway, you know. So
Deshawn is 56, but you'd never guess. She has 2 kids, 3 grandkids, and luckily for us, speaks in sound bites.
I don't have any problems with anyone. I try not to be a problem. It's easy to get in trouble and hard to get out that mess.
She's lived here for over 15 years, and she says she likes the neighborhood. Right across the street is an active church. Her next-door neighbor, Ms. Wanda, has an immaculate yard and garden. There's a corner store down the block that's been remodeled, and good vibes all around, except inside Deshawn's house.
There's a bullet hole right here, too, y'all.
Is that the one that came in from the window?
Uh-huh.
That you were talking about?
Yeah, and it's still in the wall. The bullet is still in the wall.
She says the window with the bullet hole didn't get fixed for 5 months. And then there's the hole under her front porch.
You can see it. Real.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. It doesn't look like a hole. It looks like a crater.
I think that's what took out the dinosaurs.
But currently, the biggest issue in her home is that her bathtub's knobs are stripped.
I can't take a shower. I can't. I have to use this bathroom sink and keep it real. Go in the kitchen.
She showers by getting a bucket and walking either to the kitchen sink or bathroom sink. She told her landlord about this issue months ago, but the issue still isn't fixed.
When I first moved up in here in 2009, August 15th, I was paying $525. It was owned by Bobby Robinson.
Deshawn, what are you paying for rent today?
$925.
The same property, maybe even in worse condition.
My check is only $974 a month. Now take $925 out of that. My phone bill is $60. I got a gas and light bill too.
Every month you're just sinking a little bit more.
I'm sinking more and more in the hole.
Maybe you're thinking, this home sounds like a mess and expensive, so why not move? Well, Deshawn has tried. Public housing and private housing. But trying to find an affordable apartment in Central City, Milwaukee, is not easy. And when it comes to living like this, a giant hole under a front porch, not being able to shower in her own home, bullet holes in her dining room wall.
Was I making that up?
You are not making that up.
She's not alone.
Imagine how the other tenants in them houses look.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Repair holes in foundation and roof, replace back stairs, install fence around the yard, address sewage backup, exterminate pests.
These are complaints from other renters who all have one thing in common. They all have the same landlord, David Tomlin.
Fix electrical problems, blown out fuses, and exterminate pests.
Tomlin owns a property company called Highgrove Holdings, along with about 12 other LLCs. And altogether, he's got over 200 properties in Milwaukee. These properties are riddled with code violations, and he also owes the city over $300,000 in back taxes and millions more to lenders. The homes he owns are an eyesore in already disinvested communities looking to rebuild, and a nightmare to live in for tenants like Deshaun Harris.
He paint a picture like he's, like he A1, like he a good guy, as he say. I'm a good guy, but behind closed doors, you got Jekyll and Hyde.
I'm Sam Woods.
And I'm Jimmy Gutierrez. We're reporters with WWM Milwaukee's NPR. We've learned a lot about David Tomlin, the real estate investor from California who bought into Milwaukee almost 10 years ago. We've also learned a lot about his business model.
You know the one. The one where out-of-state landlords buy up blocks of property at a time, usually in under-resourced neighborhoods, and keep them in run-down conditions, renting to tenants without many choices.
Or power.
And over the next 3 weeks, we're going to look into David Tomlin, how he built up a massive housing portfolio in Milwaukee.
And how it all came crashing down.
And how at the center of it all was tenant organizing, building power, and tapping into a little-used law.
It wasn't shocking to see somebody from California buying houses in Milwaukee.
This is John Johnson.
We had seen buyers from California, the Chicago area, Texas, and other parts of the country really since the mortgage foreclosure crisis really got going in the very early 2010s.
Johnson is a public policy research fellow at Marquette University. And Milwaukee's housing market, the comings and goings, is kind of his jam. He remembers when David Tomlin bought into the city back in 2017.
If you look at the early versions of his website, you see he's suggesting, meeting with people in groups of 20 or fewer in person to pitch them on this investment opportunity that he's identified, which is to buy cheap houses as rentals in cities that are not doing so well.
Here's kind of how this works. Our out-of-state investor buys up a portfolio of properties. He tells a group of people, his investors, to trust him that with minimal investment, they'll see maximum returns. And they usually buy in low-income, predominantly black neighborhoods. This model, Johnson says, started in southern cities, but eventually reached the Rust Belt in places like St. Louis and Indianapolis.
I would say largely third-tier cities that have pretty old housing stock and aren't really growing. In many cases are shrinking. And they realize that even though you don't have these conditions that on paper would lead to growing property values and growing amounts you can charge for rent, you get really favorable rent-to-home value ratios from the perspective of the landlord in these cities.
And that's what landlords like David Tomlin saw in Milwaukee. Expensive rents, growing demand, cheap housing stock.
They said on their website for investors that they were spending $35,000 on average per property, including rehab. So they were truly buying some of the cheapest properties in the city at that time.
He was telling his investors that they could expect up to 18% return on their investments. And for a while, this might have been working. We don't really know. But what we do know is that there has been a ton of code violations out of his properties today. Johnson says there's a name for these kinds of landlords: milkers.
Because they'll take a property, they'll spend as absolutely little on maintaining it as possible while collecting that rent, which we already talked about is often relatively high compared to the purchase price for the home.
Tomlin was not the first out-of-state or private equity landlord to circle Milwaukee on a map, buy up portfolios of homes on the north side, and do relatively little to no upkeep.
From before the mortgage foreclosure crisis from like 1990 through 2005, about 80% of the houses in Milwaukee were owner-occupied, so that includes single-family homes and duplexes. And that dropped to like 68% during the long fallout from the mortgage foreclosure crisis. We actually lost homeowners year over year, every year through 2018.
What he's saying here is that Milwaukee has only recently started to bounce back, with more people buying and owning their own homes. But that doesn't help people like Deshaun Harris, whose rent makes it impossible to save for a down payment. The more we talked with Johnson, the more curious I became about who David Tomlin is and what he represents. One thing that did stand out about him, opposed to other out-of-state landlords, is that his tenants know him. Deshaun says it's not unusual for her to get him on the phone. He also claimed to be friends with the city's mayor, Cavalier Johnson, and he claimed to be part of Milwaukee's Rotary Club.
And how can we not be curious of the claims that this business, Highgrove Holdings, was also women and minority owned? While John Johnson couldn't confirm any of this, he also wanted to know. So we thought it was time for a little road trip.
Let's go meet David Tomlin.
Since we know a little about David Tomlin at this point, we thought we would call around to the people he claims to know.
Good afternoon, Mayor Johnson's office. How can I help you? Hello, Rotary Club of Milwaukee. This is Mary.
Hi, it's Jeff Fleming.
Jeff's the mayor's spokesperson. Hey, Jeff. This is Jimmy Gutierrez from Milwaukee Public Radio. And I was just trying to get a better sense if the mayor did have a personal relationship or was familiar with David Tomlin.
With David Tomlin? Not that I'm aware of.
And so from your understanding, the mayor is unfamiliar with him?
Yes. The mayor, to my knowledge, the mayor has not had any contact other than possibly incidental contact somewhere.
My name is Jimmy Gutierrez. I'm a reporter over at Milwaukee Public Radio.
Hi, Jimmy. I got your voicemail. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary. Mary said Tomlin's been a member of the Rotary Club for about 2 years, but hasn't really left an impression.
We have 370 members, so I recognize him, but basically, mostly what I know about David is what I read in the papers.
We called his Milwaukee-based office, sent multiple texts, sent multiple emails to multiple different email accounts. Then I was directed to a local PR team.
Hi. If you record your name and reason for calling, I'll see if this person is available.
Jimmy Gutierrez, Milwaukee Public Radio reporter.
Thanks. Please stay on the line.
Crickets here too.
I'm sorry, this person is not available. If you would like to leave an additional message, please reply after the tone.
Hey, Valia. I'm trying to figure out who else I can call that might have a personal relationship with the man, so.
And I honestly don't know who that would be. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't really have, I don't know too much more.
In the last little bit, we've been playing phone tag with Tomlin's PR team. And if we do talk with him, we will share that. But for now, we still have questions. So if we can't talk to the people who know the man, maybe we can talk to the people who know what it's like living next to a Tomlin property.
I would say we've been a neighbor, and I would qualify it as a concerned neighbor. Not a nosy neighbor, but a concerned neighbor.
Larry and Sharon Adams.
Our approach has been being good, concerned citizens, using the talents we have in the area of community development, bringing people together, looking at housing, starting gardens, being caring.
Larry and Sharon co-founded Walnut Way over 20 years ago, revitalizing Milwaukee's Lindsay Heights neighborhood. Really, they transform blighted properties into places of pride. And they have recently retired, but that hasn't stopped them from working. They started Adams Garden Park, which is this huge project that has a bunch of things going on, new residential homes, commercial properties, but there's also an art walk and a sculpture garden. Big dreams for a neighborhood that's been systematically disinvested from, and one that we had to go see. We're on Fondy. We're right across the street from Johnson's Park. And we're here to see another
This is
park.
a walkway to that property, and it's an anticipation that this new property development will be special, awesome, and inviting and welcoming.
We have a sculpture garden that is within the same proximity right across the street.
We had 3 columns total here. What did the last two say?
We got realizing that in repurposing myself, I have to depend on those that are behind me and those that are seeking to be in front of me as my support. I mean, I take that as if you want to be your best self, it's going to take people around you. You can't just do it yourself. You know, you'll need, among other things, some strong neighbors. You just need others.
This sculpture garden is still coming together, but you can see the vision. There is one problem: the boarded up, abandoned house right next door. The porch, the top porch or the balcony doesn't look like is on too well, does it, Sam?
No, I'm not going to stand on that. Looks like it's about to come down. It's the front porch as well. It's got a little bit of a lean to it.
Yeah, all the boards are pretty busted up. There's a sign on here: High Grove Holdings, your place to call home. Apply to rent now.
Well, you have to do some work with the windows. Like probably
Get
put
some.
those in, yeah.
On a balance sheet, the Adams' goal is pretty similar to Tomlin: buy a portfolio of properties. The approach is what's different. Here, right off of Fond du Lac Avenue, they want to activate this neighborhood. More land stewardship, more programming, more dreaming. And for the longest time, they've wanted to buy this eyesore, as they call it, the house Tomlin owns. But every call became more and more frustrating.
I've later learned that it is a holding company. So having a holding company, I don't know of the various investors that have participated in this endeavor. So I don't put it in a singular action. I put it in a plural action of those that would take and choose to have larger proceeds of their investment at the cost or missed cost of someone else's dignity.
A plural action, not singular. Multiple people benefit here.
You hear me going, because you asked about Tomlin, but it's much larger than that. It's a holding company with investors. And for years, we could not figure out who are these investors? Who would do something like this? Have no accountability to it, only to gain profit. Yes, Tomlin took advantage of us, our neighbors, our people, but he was that type of person to take advantage, break the laws, and feel invincible.
So we just got back into the car, took a look at the art walk, Adams Garden Park, a lot of the design stuff that they had going on, as well as Tomlin's property or High Grove Holdings property. You know, when I talked with Sharon and Larry, they definitely had a lot to say about folks from out of state that purchased up a lot of property. Obviously, they don't do much with it when we're looking at the High Grove Holdings property that we just were at, and kind of what that says to a community, what that says to the people that make it up, and then also their ability to keep up this momentum that obviously they've done so much. They've done so much to turn this neighborhood around and to make it a desirable spot for people outside of the neighborhood, but also a point of pride for the people that live here. The impacts Tomlin and High Grove have had on people in neighborhoods in the city are tough to overstate. And there's still this itch that we both have, I'd say, since we couldn't talk to him. But what we found out as we were reporting is that there's a reason why he may not want to talk with us.
Yeah, and that reason is because everyone wants to talk with him right now. To keep it brief, it seems all of his dealings in Milwaukee have finally caught up to him. Multiple lawsuits from his investors, his contractors, and even his tenants.
Hello, hello. Welcome, Common Ground, the Community Baptist Church. Glad to have you with us. Thank God for you. Well, hello, young lady.
On a cold Wednesday night in February, on the corner of North Ave and Sherman Boulevard, tenants of David Tomlin got together.
Good to have you tonight. God bless you.
Common Ground is a local organization that you're going to learn a lot more about, but they do work around a bunch of issues, including organizing tenants. Tonight, on the meeting's agenda was High Grove Holdings founder, David Tomlin.
And this is where we ran back into Deshawn Harris, David Tomlin's tenant from the beginning of the story. She was here to speak to the crowd about what it's like living in a Tomlin property.
How are you feeling? Are you nervous about speaking your piece, or do you feel like it's about time?
It's about time that someone heard my voice. I've been trying to get help for years about this person, David Tomlin, and I kept running into dead end walls. All the resources they gave me, it was limited. So God sent the right people, Common Ground, Tenant United. I'm so glad because I don't have to fight this battle by myself because this is a war. You know what I'm saying? So I feel good about it.
The crowd was lively, maybe a few hundred people, feeding off the collective power in the room. It started with a roll call of partners in attendance, then speakers organizing other actions across the city, and then finally, the topic of David Tomlin.
Tomlin claims that High Grove is woman and minority owned.
They spoke about the fact that 40% of his Milwaukee properties are boarded up, that he's backed by private equity investors, and that a lot of those investors have since sued him. They talked about the fact that he owes over $300,000 in back taxes to the city of Milwaukee. And then it was Deshaun's turn to speak.
Okay. Here we go. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Deshaun Harris. I'm a tenant of High Grove. I'm with Tenant United.
Deshaun was the last tenant to speak, and she started by talking about the troubles she's had in Tomlin's property.
The bullet is still in my dining room wall. I have a big hole up under my front porch that's big enough to bury 4 or 5 people up under it. It's been open for 6 years like that. The backyard, it looks like a jungle.
She went on and talked about how it made her feel to live in a house like this.
Out of place, my livelihood, mental anguish, upset, and it's despicable that no one should have to live on his property that's rent from him, should live like that. Tenants are uniting, no more blaming us, intimidating us, overcharging us, ignoring us, hurting us. We're taking back our power.
It turns out that Common Ground and Tomlin's tenants had a plan, one they had been working on for months, one with a powerful partner, the city of Milwaukee.
Please stand if you think it's time for us to evict David Tomlin. Please stand. Let's go.
The plan? Evict David Tomlin from his own properties. This all came after Common Ground gave Tomlin 3 tests.
First, fix issues reported by 29 High Grove tenants, starting with safety concerns. Second, create a plan to demolish or sell 26 of his worst abandoned properties. And third, pay his taxes.
He failed all 3. And that's what triggered Common Ground and the city's attorney's office coming together on one of the oldest, most aggressive tenant protection laws on the books, a little-used law called receivership.
It basically allows the city to appoint a person or organization to receive Tomlin's properties, fixing them up and making them livable for tenants. And if you have more questions about how something like this is possible, don't worry, there's plenty more coming on this next episode. But bottom line, if this happens, David Tomlin will not be Deshaun's landlord for the foreseeable future.
I came a long way from not getting justice to part of justice, seeing it halfway through. That means a lot, than not having no help at all. And more importantly, my voice is not the only one that's going to be heard.
This level of organizing didn't just happen. Next episode, we're looking into how someone who's been walked all over takes back power and evicts their landlord, and how they build up enough power to take on someone like David Tomlin, who owns over 200 properties in the city and has a bevy of out-of-state investors. That was part 1 of our series, How to Evict Your Landlord. Parts 2 and 3 are coming up after a short break on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. You're listening to Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Sam Woods. In part one of our series, How to Evict Your Landlord, we learned about landlord David Tomlin and why his tenants are uniting against him. Now, we learn how tenants got organized and how they allied with city government to take action.
All right, so you are in, as my uncle used to say, the safest place on earth when you're in this vehicle.
This is Kevin Solomon.
He always used to say that.
I love that.
He said, I am the best driver. I'm the most coordinated person.
Kevin is a senior organizer with Milwaukee's Common Ground.
This is more safe than in a nuclear bunker right now.
He's been at the front of their campaign fighting for tenants' rights against Milwaukee corporate landlord David Tomlin.
You know, tenants as a political class need to have a kind of collective voice because they're getting pinched and they're growing.
Some background on Common Ground. It is a collective of over 40 local organizations, lots of faith-based institutions, but not only. And members pay regular dues. They vote on campaigns, like what they'd like to see the org take on next, which is what led them to taking on Tomlin.
We picked 3 big corporate landlords where we had heard from some tenants and said, let's go look further, let's go investigate further. Went and talked to 30 or 40 tenants in each of their networks. And from that said, strategically, let's go with Highgrove Holdings.
That is David Tomlin's company in Milwaukee. And the deeper they looked, the deeper the problems.
The delinquent taxes, the lead hazards, the private equity investors suing him, the I'm a woman minority-owned business and the guy looks like me. You know, those
primary research, check. Target acquired, check. What comes next? Mobilizing. Going door to door to find tenants of Tomlin willing to speak out.
Creating maps and spreadsheets and clipboards and vests and coordinating a training, having folks come to the front of the room and practice what might you say at the door, pairing up and then going out, then coming back and systematically evaluating what did we hear, what were the stories, who stood out as a leader.
This is campaign building. And this is when Kevin met Deshaun Harris, the Tomlin tenant from episode 1, who we are driving to meet now.
Today's about making sure 2 things. 1, Deshaun is crystal clear on the logistics.
Last time, Deshaun was telling her story to Common Ground members at Community Baptist Church. In a few days, she'll be doing it again, but this time at a press conference in front of TV cameras and city officials. Common Ground is going public with their lawsuit against David Tomlin and Highgrove Holdings, and Kevin is on his way to coach Deshaun on her speech.
But the more important second agenda item is, what do you want to say, Deshaun? This is her moment. This is 10 months in the making, years of pain and hurt.
He says it was clear from early on that Deshaun had it, that magical it that makes people listen and take notice.
One of the things Deshaun is so good at is anger. We often say anger is a bad thing, but no, anger is so good because it gives you courage to speak truth, to fight, to
There's a lot of groundwork that goes into taking on a Tomlin. A lot of groundwork to channel anger into justice. A lot of groundwork to fight for people like Deshaun, and even to find her in the first place. And that's what Common Ground says they're here to do.
On your own, as an individual in this world, you don't have a lot of power. Things kind of happen to you. With your church or your synagogue or your neighborhood group or your mosque or your food pantry or your little league or your small business, you got a little bit more power. But when you're working with institutions all over the city, you got a lot more power.
I'm Sam Woods.
And I'm Jimmy Gutierrez. We are reporters with WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR, and today we are breaking down how a community takes on a corporate landlord with hundreds of properties and big-time investors.
How do you build power, block by block, until it boils over and people in power have to take notice?
How did Common Ground mobilize tenants and partner with the city of Milwaukee to make history? And is this something we're going to see more of?
That's my stepdaughter. You might as well say that's my daughter. So she's sweet as pie.
David Tomlin tenant Deshaun Harris again.
Yep, that's her youngest daughter. Let me see which one. I call her baby. Yep, this right here.
Oh, okay.
That's her daddy.
When Kevin gets to Deshaun's, they hug, talk about family, and catch up like they're old friends. I mean, they have been in the mud on this together for the last 6 months.
What do you think she's gonna say when she sees you on the news? What do you hope she says?
Mom, I can't believe it. I'm proud of you.
They turn to business. They walk around the property, taking inventory of the mess, the giant hole under the porch, the bullet hole in the dining room wall, the leaking water in her basement.
Coming straight down.
Straight leaking.
Damn.
When they get back upstairs, they sit around her table. "What do you want to say at the press conference?" he asks. "What feels right?" She brings up not being able to shower in her own house.
I have to run and get it from the kitchen sink.
So what do? You take a bucket?
Whatever I,
and just fill it up with water from the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
Add some soap. How many times do you have to do that to fill?
A lot of times. I can't even tell you.
5, 6, 7?
It's more than that. It's more than that. It's maybe over 10 times.
Okay, Deshaun, that's what we say.
Okay.
That's what you got to talk about.
Okay.
Because that's what people, when they hear that story, they're going to imagine their life and go, oh, that's messed up. She shouldn't have to deal with that.
Right.
If we
3 minutes go fast, he tells her. Do you want to shoot from the hip, or do you need more preparation? They do a little mock speech, and Kevin takes notes.
Hi, my name is Deshaun Harris.
Keep it natural, he says. More Deshaun, less prep.
You're role-playing it.
They talk a little bit more about family, confirm everything is good for the press conference, and then it's on to the next tenant for Kevin.
Give me a big ol' hug.
Thank you. We'll knock it
It's going to be fun.
I'm going to be there, you know, and I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my best.
We'll get you in the studio at some
What
point
stood out
next
to you
month.
there?
I mean, it was really, I think it was how you connect, walking through the property, a lot of validation, obviously, and then the coaching. I don't know what I was expecting, but I think it was probably pretty close. How do you feel like it went?
I feel like it's good. Often, you do the coaching and it helps, it gives support, it gives clarity, structure, etc. But sometimes then, speakers will kind of cage up and try to be more polished and on script and I actually think that
seeing him work with Deshaun like this makes sense that he also coaches Little League. But there was something picking at me. It's clear that Deshaun wants better and wants more from her landlord. I mean, she is paying for it. But does she want to be in front of TV cameras, sharing her story like this? And did Kevin think about that? I mean, he's here in part because he's got a job to do. He's paid by Common Ground to win. So how much of this is transactional? When does it become coaching to, not exploitation, but when does it become something else? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is where, constantly asking, does that feel right? And these aren't my words, these are your words. And I'm just, helping kind of put something together here. The difference, though, it would be transactional if I'm coming, getting her story, and then sayonara. Deshaun's been in it for months. Deshaun's met my family. Deshaun's been to all the potlucks with all the leaders. She's been voting on decisions along the way. The press conference Thursday is step 1. There'll be 50 other steps to this campaign. She'll be involved in all of it.
As someone who's also featured Deshaun's story, I completely get it. You hear her story and you're compelled. Ideally, action happens. And from Common Ground's perspective, I get the why. But what about Kevin Solomon's why? Why are you still doing this work? Why did you get into this work? Why are you driving over to Deshaun and coaching her up?
We'd need an hour for that.
Kevin is from St. Petersburg, Florida, and he has been in Milwaukee for 6 years now. And a theme of his life, from early childhood to high school to beyond, is that he's always had adults pouring into him, a lot of mentorship, a lot of coaching. And a lot of that could have been because of what was missing. He loved his parents, but lost both of them growing up.
My mom passed when I was 12. My dad had liver cirrhosis. And so when I was 17, I moved out when he started having a lot of the health issues from drinking and alcoholism. And
that's tough, man.
Yeah, and the family that took me in, the mom's a nurse, leads with her heart. The dad's a professor of ancient Chinese history, leads with his brain. And so I'd go for walks with the mom and process alcoholism and trauma and grief and pain. And on Christmas dinner, we'd sit down with the dad and the rest of the family and talk about thalassocratic European empires in the 14th century. I like to fight bullies. I want to build power, and I'm really empathetic and curious about people. So conversations with Deshaun like that are just wonderful.
He'll say this isn't about him, and that is true. This is Deshaun's story, and other Talmud tenant story. It's Ebony's story, Samantha Nashan's story, But he's been driving them to speak out, to canvass, to organize. He even helped the city of Milwaukee to step in, to fight David Tomlin together.
This is the largest public nuisance enforcement action in Milwaukee's history. And it's the first time in Milwaukee history that tenants, a community organization as big and powerful as Common Ground, or any community organization, and the city attorney have teamed up. That trio has never existed.
Kevin says they approached City Attorney Evan Goyke in the middle of 2025, sharing their findings, the testimony of tenants, and sold him that this is a fight worth taking up.
Milwaukee should be transformed from friendly to landlords to friendly to tenants and good landlords. And so this is a first down payment effort at holding one of these huge corporate landlords, of which there are dozens, that are profiting off of preying upon our neighbors. We're saying to them, enough is enough. And that if you don't do right, we're coming for you. Actions have consequences. We are the consequences.
But those consequences don't happen in a vacuum. Coming up, we talk with City Attorney Evan Goyke about actions and consequences.
How does a city partner with tenants to evict a landlord? And what could all this mean for David Tomlin? You remember that press conference where Common Ground and the city's lawsuit went public?
This morning, we filed 2 different lawsuits. City of Milwaukee versus High Grove Holdings, LLC, and a number of other corporate names.
They charged High Grove Holdings of being a public nuisance, not only for the thousands of code violations on dozens of properties, but because Tomlin allegedly built his business by paying investors and ignoring tenants.
We are asking a court to declare them a nuisance. Yes. But going beyond just the status of the properties, we are asking a court to declare the business operations of High Grove Holdings, how they operate, a nuisance in the city of Milwaukee.
And this is Evan Goyke.
EvanGoyke. I'm the city attorney for the city of Milwaukee, and the group represents what we internally call the neighborhood revitalization team.
Goyke has been Milwaukee's attorney for 2 years, after serving as a member of the state assembly for over a decade. And Goyke was upfront about wanting to partner with Common Ground because it was a win-win. Common Ground could reach tenants in ways the city couldn't.
Who have the commitment and capacity to go knock on strangers' doors and say, how are you? And how is your landlord? And how are the conditions? And can we help?
Hearing from tenants and having access to this wide swath of home inspections set the city up for this fight. And while we're talking about the lawsuits, what we're really interested in is the law at the center of it all, receivership. Here's Julie Wilson, Deputy City Attorney.
What we're asking for here is to almost hit pause on the management of this portfolio.
The first way to do this, stop Tomlin from creating a new LLC to transfer the properties to and escape the lawsuit.
Judge, please don't allow them to sell and transfer and quitclaim deed to one another these properties. Keep them in the same ownership group so we have tabs on them and you have jurisdiction over them.
Then, demonstrate how Tomlin has harmed tenants and mismanaged properties so badly that he can't keep managing them.
It's really wretched conditions. People shouldn't have children sleeping on beds with a bucket next to them in case it rains and water comes through the hole in the roof.
If it all works out, the judge will appoint a receiver for over half of Tomlin's properties. That could be a nonprofit, an LLC, or someone working with the city on this. Tomlin would still legally own the properties, but would not be able to manage them or collect rent from them.
The receiver would use tenants' rents to pay down the city's tax bill, which as of today is still over $300,000, and bring properties up to code. And that receiver would be in place for as long as it takes to fix up these properties, cutting Tomlin off from rental income for months or even years.
While this law hasn't been used in a while, it's still fresh in some renters' minds. About a decade ago, the city attorney's office successfully brought similar cases against 2 notorious landlords, Elijah Muhammad Rashid and Muhammad Chowdhury.
According to the city attorney, since 2001, he's committed 15,000 building code violations. Everything from allegedly unfair evictions to accepting emergency assistance funds when he shouldn't.
Goyke says the cases are similar, but Tomlin is different enough.
So he owed less taxes than Chowdhury, and some of the violations of building code were less egregious than Rashid. But he has a whole lot of code violations and still owes us a whole lot of taxes, and you spread them around the portfolio. It's indiscriminate in it is exemplifying every kind of nuisance and degree of nuisance.
So, a couple things to clear up here. Are they technically evicting David Tomlin? No. He will still legally own the properties. But what they are doing is forcing his hand to bring his properties up to some sort of livable standard, deal with code violations, and pay off his taxes. But we're also talking about a man that's got multi-million-dollar investors behind him. So how bulletproof is this plan?
If I were Tomlin, it might be really nice just to sit on the sideline, have my properties abated, have my tenants still there, have the properties of the homes themselves increase quite a bit, and then step back in and take ownership or an active role in ownership.
You are suggesting that the property owner use income paid by rents to keep their property in code compliance and pay their taxes. We agree that's a good business model.
Opposed to not collecting rent and not doing anything.
Right. And Jimmy, just remember in your scenario where this is a freeloading opportunity to get a benefit, we, in an earlier conversation, talked about how Highgrove has pitched a rate of return to investors, and that will be interrupted by the receiver. The receiver is not appointed to make sure the investors are getting their 10% return on their investment. They're making sure the houses are a decent place to live. And so it is possible that a property owner could ride through the whole process, but it is highly unlikely that that she or he could do so and maintain those same promises and those same deals or negotiations that they have with their lenders.
This is not a sound business practice, and probably not sustainable. But another thing to note here is that these fixes can't happen overnight.
And a judge still needs to rule, and they still need to find a receiver. And if things go according to plan, the work needs to get inventoried and then eventually triaged, which again, all could take months or years before tenants see relief.
And while Goike is confident that Tomlin can't just wait out this process, it is possible that he could find a way to hold on to these properties and things go right back to how they were.
But that doesn't take away from this being a huge moment for tenants, for Common Ground, and for the city.
And huge for other neglectful landlords, because this is a warning shot.
We talk about the deterrent effect of a case like this. I hope that it is received by property owners. I hope they listen to the story and realize that we're paying attention to them, and we will use this very powerful tool, and we will do so effectively.
This case could be the first of many, and used as an example for how to streamline using receivership moving forward, finding a way to make it more efficient and more impactful. And how this all plays out with Tomlin and his properties will shape a lot of what comes next.
Kevin Solomon from Common Ground told us that when news of the lawsuit got out, he started hearing from landlords in the city with not great reputations, almost trying to play nice before anything could happen.
And that is exactly what Goike was hoping for.
I hope that they will not take Jimmy's personal advice to run a business that involves being in the receivership long term. Do right. Do it without the city filing a lawsuit. And that there's a whole growing group of people and organizations out there paying attention.
Next time on How to Evict Your Landlord, we go back to previous cases of the city using receivership against a problem landlord and find out how these cases work and what could come next for Tomlin's properties. And we finally speak to the man at the center of it all, David Tomlin. That was part 2 of our series, How to Evict Your Landlord. Part 3 is coming up after a short break on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. This is Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Sam Woods. In parts 1 and 2 of our series, How to Evict Your Landlord, We learned about landlord David Tomlin and how his tenants and the city of Milwaukee worked together to take Tomlin to court. In this third and final part, we examine previous cases of the city using receivership law against delinquent landlords. And then we speak with the man himself, David Tomlin.
Calling case number 25 CV 854 U.S. Bank Trust National Association versus RPR.
Early this March, we stopped by Milwaukee's courthouse.
We wanted to drop in on the most recent hearing of U.S. Bank's lawsuit against corporate landlord David Tomlin and his company, Highgrove Holdings.
Good afternoon again, gentlemen.
So this room is impressively large, very ornate. The air was stale. And Sam, we were the only two people in the room, besides the people that were paid to be there.
We sure were, and all we knew back then was that the bank was suing Tomlin. The total bill was for over $8 million for failing to pay towards his loans. And U.S. Bank was seeking to receive over 80 of his properties.
Before we called the case on the record, I asked the attorneys to come in to the chambers just to talk.
This is the judge, Michael Hanrahan. The judge goes over some of the details of the case, how much money Tomlin owes, what the judge heard from both parties in chambers. But after that, he lets everyone know that no big decisions are going to be made here.
I am deciding that today is not the day to decide the petition for receivership. The main basis for that is that this is a business dispute that's relatively complex. There's a lot of moving parts. Some of the issues...
Test.
After that, we had a little check-in in the court's hallway, and I asked your take since you've been the one that's really been following this case.
It's interesting reading legal briefs. It's like when you're reading through those, they're trying to make their case individually, and so it looks like these two just like hate each other and like can't stand each other, and there's no way they could reconcile. And then you like see it happen in person, and they're like, yeah, we might be able to work something out. And no idea.
I think for me, something that stood out was something that was familiar. And it was a delay tactic. And it's kind of the same thing that we experienced trying to get in touch with Tomlin for this story. And when we were in the courtroom, that's something that it seems like Judge Hanrahan called Tomlin's attorney out for because of a last-minute filing.
Pardon, your recent filing was pretty recent. March 10th. It was 11 pages and a lot of documentation, not all of which I looked at. But I don't want that to happen again.
It seems like Tomlin's attorney kind of waited to the last minute to drop a pretty big document dump to the court and for the judge to read, which it sounds like he didn't appreciate. And I mean, it seems like a stalling tactic. And it's going to be really interesting what that means because, as we know, the city is also coming after these properties and coming after any sort of capital that Tomlin's holding on to at the moment. So you've got what it feels like are two entities, the city and then the U.S. Bank, that both want whatever Tomlin has. I'm Jimmy Gutierrez.
And I'm Sam Woods. We're reporters with WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. And throughout the last two episodes, we've shown you how out-of-state landlord David Tomlin and Highgrove Holdings operate as a business, one that keeps rents as high as possible while doing as little upkeep as possible.
For the past decade, Tomlin and his LLCs have been buying up properties across the north side of Milwaukee, over 250 total. And during that time, he has racked up countless code violations, been labeled a public nuisance, both his properties and his business practices, and all because of that, one of his biggest lenders, U.S. Bank, and the city of Milwaukee are coming for him and his properties through a little-used law called receivership.
Today, we're diving deep into receivership, how this has played out before in the city's history, and what can residents in Tomlin's properties expect. And then, finally, we talk with David Tomlin.
The idea of a public nuisance is one of those things that the public probably doesn't see a lot or hear a lot about.
This is West Allis City Attorney Cale Decker.
The definition is quite broad. It just says any condition that might impact the public rights, negatively impact the public rights.
Decker was the assistant city attorney in Milwaukee the last time the city rolled out a receivership charge. This was against the notorious landlord Elijah Muhammad Rashid.
In that case, what he would do is he would typically not repair his properties until ordered to do so by the city, effectively making the city his property manager.
And even then, he would accomplish those repairs in a way that were substandard or were likely to repeat. Those are the types of things that the city accused him of, as well as the public nuisance angle included all of his code violations that were unrepaired in a timely manner. There are a number of different theories, but those are the primary ones in which the city alleged against Mr. Rashid.
I have a number of questions on how this process works, right? So one, who decides who gets to be the receiver? Are there like scheduled check-ins, like we're going to check in 6 months, make sure this receiver is actually, not continuing the public nuisance, right? Is there ever a time where it's like, okay, now the receiver's done their job, this can go back to, in this case, into Rashid's hands. Once it's appointed, how it actually works months or years down the line.
So the concept of receiver always starts with one of the parties asking for a receiver to be appointed. Ultimately, the court decides who that is. The court will often ask the parties if they have any preferences or any suggestions as to who could be the receiver, but ultimately the court makes that decision. It's important because that person is then responsible to the court, so the judge has to not only agree with who that person is, but also has to decide the terms in which that receivership will exist. So does that mean monthly check-ins? Does it mean that that receiver is good for, they can do their work until a certain event happens? I think in the receivership case for Rashid, every month or two, that receiver would provide a written report to the court on the ongoing efforts that the receiver was making in trying to fix up properties and organize rent rolls, ensure that properties, when there were code violations that had urgent needs, were getting addressed.
Sam, can I ask a dumb question? What happened to Rashid and his properties? Did this work?
Not a dumb question. But first off, there are actually 2 receivership charges happening at the same time. So one is against Elijah Muhammad Rashid that Cale Decker is running through right now. The other was against another problem landlord, Mohammed Chowdhury. In Chowdhury's case, the receiver took him out of business. For Rashid, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Originally, Rashid's properties weren't put into receivership, but when it became clear that he wasn't going to abate the nuisance on his own, the court appointed a receiver. And while his properties were managed by a receiver, he actually transferred ownership of the properties to his family. So to answer your question, did receivership evict Rashid? It's complicated. And so I wanted to ask Decker what he thought of receivership and how effective is it really?
Given all the options currently out there in the law, I think it's the most effective one. In the past, there's been attempts to render forfeitures against property owners, or you build up municipal court violations because of code violations. That is only effective if the person pays. You've also had things like issuing orders against property owners saying that should fix it, and it works. But if you're issuing orders every single time and the person doesn't do anything preventively and instead just sits around and waits for orders, it's also not as effective. So like anything else in code enforcement or police work or anything else like that, the general tools will work 80% of the time. The remaining 20% takes a more specialized tool, which will work 80% of that time. You're always going to keep going until there's a small number where all your general tools are just not working. This is the opportunity, and this is the type of tool that is sort of the last one. And that is because it directly impacts the revenue stream. That is the one thing that a property owner needs to make their properties worth it. They need a revenue stream. A receivership cuts that revenue stream to zero. So that's why it is the most impactful. It's also the most work. It's also used the least for that reason.
While it's impossible to know for sure if receivership will ultimately evict Tomlin from Milwaukee, given that he owes over $8 million to just one lender in U.S. Bank and other lenders are suing him as well, it seems from the outside that Highgrove is desperate for income. And Jimmy, I'm no lawyer, I'm no banker, I'm no economist, but looking from the outside, it's hard to see Tomlin and Highgrove survive without months or even years of collecting income from rent.
That's a tall task, and I think maybe what we should just do is ask him. Because after months of reaching out, we finally got him on a call. Highgrove Holdings founder and corporate out-of-state landlord, David Tomlin. That's next. Dave, can you hear me?
Yes, I sure can. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Thank you for jumping on and talking with us.
Great. I know Valia is going to be joining us here in just a second.
Okay. Would you like to wait for her?
Yeah, if you don't mind, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Tomlin agreed to a Zoom call with us as long as his PR rep could join in, and they gave us a 15-minute window. We started out by asking about Deshaun Harris's property and fact-checking what we could. She was the Tomlin tenant from episode 1.
We did tour the place, and there are a number of things that she's, not particularly happy about. Giant hole underneath her porch, bathtub knob stripped, overgrowth in the backyard with wires running through, and a bullet that's been lodged in the wall since last summer. She seems like that's, to her, hasn't rose to being a good landlord of kind of fixing those issues. So I want to give you the chance to speak to that.
Sure, I appreciate it. First of all, my company in High Grove, very, very, very much committed to the city of Milwaukee in spite of all that's going on right now. We're in lockstep with the city of Milwaukee. And
jumping in here because this goes on for about the first minute of his answer. Lots of deflecting before getting into Deshaun's claims specifically.
Things about the bathtub and everything like that, we have nothing on record about that. That's number one. The bullet holes in the window were taken care of. And I understand the bullet hole in the wall, I double checked that. We're all taken care of in December with that. And the situation of the hole underneath, that should have been taken care of. That was a water line replacement that we did back. I don't have the exact date.
Hey, David,
was a water line.
Yeah. Can we jump in here real quick? Thank you for answering those. I think Sam's got something else.
Yeah, so mentioned the window that the bullet came through was taken care of in December, and that the hole underneath the porch should have been taken care of. Now, Deshaun notes that the bullet window, that was 5 months afterwards, and it was, obviously December here gets a little cold, and also curious what happened to, the hole should have been taken care of, so what happened?
Well, I explained this to her. I said, Ms. Harris, this is not an emergency item. We will get to it. You have people going on vacation. You were going into wintertime. Our priorities were DNS health and safety issues. And I explained that to her. I said, but we would get there. Her concern was getting it done before her family came out for Christmas time. And I said, we would make sure that was done. And it was done prior to her time with Christmas time.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, David. Appreciate you jumping in there. I just want to follow up on, you had talked about having like a really strong relationship and working relationship with the city. At the same time, the city has filed lawsuits against you and claiming for this receivership law that they're looking for to reclaim a whole bunch of properties or to abate them and get them in working order. So I guess, what is your take on the receivership? Because it feels like this is pretty historic that they've teamed up with Common Ground and tenants here, and that they've found enough to find fault with in being a public nuisance, both in your properties and the way that you run a business.
Yes. Again, we're committed to the city of Milwaukee. We're committed to our residents. 2 years ago, I had a meeting with the mayor. He introduced me to Claire Schlocker of her office that I work with. And working with Claire and with the head of the DNS, we were able to put our properties into special enforcement. And that's worked out very well. We have an assigned inspector. There are two classifications. We have the major properties that what you saw in the news that were part of this contractors walking off that take permits, architects, plans submitted, all of those types of things. And all that's going to be done, by the way, with our new financing coming in, which the city knows about, our lenders know about, they're working with us by the end of the year. But right now, we are current on any current DNS things that are coming up. And these are more of the minor situations with that.
I think a lot of people are going to hear this and are going to hear and see all of the reporting and see the press conferences, and that half of your portfolio is snagged up in this receivership law. You've got U.S. Bank, which we sat in on, one of these court cases with your attorney and their attorneys. It's a lot of work that has to happen. What are your future plans for Milwaukee? Like, you have a lot of properties that I think from what we're hearing from not just Deshaun, but Samantha and Sean and Ebony and all of these folks had substandard issues in your property specifically.
In terms of our lenders and everything like that, one of the mistakes we did was we stopped bringing in investor money because we had the problems with the contractors. We had problems with COVID. We had problems with inflation. We have not evicted anybody. because our tenants are suffering right now, we have not evicted anybody since September of 2024, on the record.
There's a lot being thrown out here that we're going to go over in a second. But what you should know is that while we had Tomlin in this call, he did admit that Highgrove made some mistakes, but he never apologized. Not to the city of Milwaukee, not to his paying tenants, not to Deshaun. No contrition for a lot of the people's experiences in his properties.
We both need to be somewhere in 9 minutes.
No.
We went a little long.
Yeah,
But
appreciate
thank you.
that.
We appreciate it.
We'll be with you some more.
Okay.
More to continue. Thank you, everybody. We'll be out there with you.
Recording stopped.
Sitting with his tape right now, I think we just need to go over some of these claims that he made and just fact check. And I think the first thing that we need to do is that he made this claim of falling behind on his properties, which he repeated a few times because 3 of his contractors went belly up during COVID. So what should we know about that?
Yeah, so Common Ground and Tomlin himself made clear that those contractors were only responsible for about 20 homes. And as a reminder, that's less than 10% of his Milwaukee portfolio. And remember, Common Ground is the organization that's been at the heart of organizing his tenants to speak out, documenting their issues with his properties, and really driving this lawsuit to the city.
Okay, so another huge claim that was made is that there are no open DNS claims or code violations, basically, on his properties. He tried to specify that that's only over the past 6 months, but what should we know about that?
You remember talking with John Johnson from Marquette?
Yep.
So Johnson put together a whole spreadsheet of open code violations on his properties and listing some as recent as January. And now it's possible that Tomlin took care of everything in the last couple of weeks between when that list was generated and when he talked to us. But given that he was generating dozens of new violations about every other week at the time, I do have my suspicions about that claim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that document, so I'd have to say same. There's something else that he brought up multiple times that we need to talk about, and that was his stated commitment to the city of Milwaukee. He sounded dead set that he is not going anywhere, even if the city and U.S. Bank are coming for his properties. I guess that's a claim only time will tell, but we do need to think about the other players in this story.
Evan Goyke and the city attorney's office are pushing hard. They've studied Decker's takedown of previous problem landlords, and they're new to the office, and they see this as a big opportunity to send a message and start a legacy.
And we know Kevin Solomon and Common Ground are all in. They're still sending out press releases to this day, organizing press conferences, and even exposing some new issues Tomlin tenants are facing. And of course, there's Deshaun Harris.
So around early March, a woman stopped by Deshaun's house. She told Deshaun that her home was sold and that it didn't belong to Tomlin anymore. This was the first Deshaun had heard about it, and it made her really nervous because she had all these questions. What did this mean for the rent that she already couldn't afford? Or all of the work she was still waiting to be done on her home?
That it wasn't no surprise, but it was just how you sell this and don't send nothing in your tenants that you sold the property to somebody else. You know, it's scary because you don't know if this person gonna ask you to move or what. If you don't got the resources, don't got common sense to know. So my hope is that by being in transition as this property's supposed to have been sold now, I hope it don't end that way for me. You see what I'm saying? It can go any way.
While the new owners have yet to tell Deshaun what their plans are with the property, Common Ground isn't waiting. They're planning to rehab Deshaun's home soon, fixing her bathroom, patching the bullet hole in her dining room wall, and making the home livable again.
And when it comes to the sale of her home, I think there's a final note to take away from it. Even though Tomlin doesn't own the property anymore, it's the way that it was handled that tells us something about him and his business model. These properties are commodities. So are the residents and the people that live in them. There was no outreach here like he told us there is on the Zoom call, where he really talked up his relationship with residents.
And while Highgrove's property empire may have peaked in Milwaukee, out-of-state corporate landlords are still a problem, one that Common Ground and the city of Milwaukee will be keeping an eye on. And what happens with Tomlin could set a precedent for how the community takes on future negligent landlords.
So y'all be safe.
You too.
You as well.
Y'all need to get in touch with me.
Got you.
That was How to Evict Your Landlord, a series produced by WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez and myself. Full articles accompanying each part are available on WUWM.com. And that's Lake Effect for today. I'm Sam Woods. Audrey Nowakowski, Joy Powers, and Excret Nunez join me in producing Lake Effect each week, with help from Graham Thomas. Becky Mortensen is our executive producer, and Emily Files helps edit the show. We also heard from Maria Peralta Arellano, Catherine Kokel, Mayan Silver, and Jimmy Gutierrez from the WUWM News team this week. Jason Reevy is our studio engineer, Valeria Navarro Villegas is our digital operations manager, and Trapper Shep wrote our theme music. If you missed any of Lake Effect this week, you can find all our conversations at WUWM.com. And if you'd like to take the show on the go, you can download the Lake Effect podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Join us again on Monday at noon for a conversation remembering Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel columnist Dan Bice. But today, thanks so much for joining us on listener-supported 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.